fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons, like diamonds. We are back, unchurched. 4 easy steps to quickly get out of any rut in life. Yes, there's 4 steps, and I've done them. I've gone through these same 4, and you're going to be blown away with how simple it is and also how powerful it is. So these are 4 easy steps to quickly get out of any kind of rut that you are in life. Because let's face it, we've all gone through them. Many of us are going through one right now. And I'm really recording this because I just kind of got out of one, and so I've been there. It's fresh. I have also seen a lot of my close friends and even some people in our Insider Club who are going through just a tough time where you feel like you can't get out. The world's against you. Everything's going bad, and I get it. And this could be in terms of financial, stuff that, money's tight. You're not where you want to be financially. It could be on the side of relationships, maybe girlfriend, boyfriend, spouse, whatever it is, the things are tougher. Relationships with your kids where just everything feels like it's falling apart and it's a constant battle. Ask me how I know. I've been there a few times. Or it could be, spiritual or religion. You're having challenges with that. It could be the health side. That's obviously a big thing that's everyone's talking about right now. First, beginning of the year, getting your health in order. And we talked about that on a recent podcast. For me personally, it was a little bit of a combination of all that. But in particular, if I wanted to pick something specifically for me, last year, there were many times I felt my rut was just not living to basically the man that God created me to be. On a past episode with Pastor Johnny Kelly, we talked about how every one of us has been given some kind of unique gift. Every one of us has been given literally like a superpower from God to you. He wants us to use it, and he wants us to exploit it for good purposes. He wants us to use it and exploit it in our lives for him, for his kingdom. He wants us to use it and exploit that superpower he has given us to do good in our community, to make an impact with the people around you and your friends and your family and your coworkers. And I know what mine is. You may or may not know what yours is. I challenge you to really do some thinking about that, and I'll put a link to the show notes of where we talked about that. And there's actually a couple steps to really identify what your superpower is. And I went through a time there where I knew deep down I wasn't maximizing it. And there's a guy, Ed Milet, I've mentioned him a couple times in the past. He's got a great podcast. And he talks about maxing out, and the whole thing is maxing out your God-given ability. And man, when you're doing it, right? When they call it the flow, where everything seems to be flowing. Everything seems easier. You're doing what you were born to do. And on the other days when you're in that rut and you just feel like complete crap and you just feel like, man, I am not good at anything, that's usually when you're furthest away from using your superpower. And I had quite a few times like that last year where I was just so burnt out, just not really fulfilled, even though I put a big smile on. I knew deep down I wasn't doing everything I needed to do in my life to maximize my special gifts. And that is a form of a rut. And so I want to talk about a podcast, and this was a blog. I know it's turned into a podcast a couple times, but there was a blog by a guy named James Altucher, and I talked about him in my book, Fishing for Happiness, and actually ran into him and spent some time with him in a restaurant in New York, ironically, and super nice guy. And if you don't know James' story, it's nuts. They should make a movie about this guy. He ended up selling some .com company, back in the 90s for, let's just say it was $10 million. It was many millions. I don't know the number. And so he's doing well. He's young, single, doesn't have that many expenses. And he somehow managed to blow every single penny and then some. Like, talk about a roller coaster ride. Like, can you imagine making $10 million in a really short amount of time, and then in a really short amount of time blowing every single penny and then some, like going bankrupt? And he did it. And then he did it again, meaning he actually like picked himself up and like started over from scratch, started a new business, sold that for millions of dollars, and then lost it again. And then he did it again. No lie. Like, all right, come on, James. Like, maybe there's a trend here. Maybe there was something that you were doing really, really well when you were making all that money and things were just flowing to you. And maybe there was something that you were doing negatively when all of it was flowing away from you, like the opposite of a magnet, right? I mean, it was literally just being repelled from. Like, it's crazy. So he started looking back at his life and looking back at those times when he was just killing it, and then looking at those times where nothing seemed to be going right. I mean, talk about the ultimate rut. No matter what you're going through, I have to imagine it's probably not as bad as losing $10 million 3 times in a row. I mean, that's unheard of. And yet now he is in a really good financial position. He has now rebuilt everything again. This is like the 4th or 5th time. Like I said, this should be a movie. And when I read his blog, it really hit me how right he was. And he basically boiled it down into just 4 things. And he said, these 4 things, which is what we're going to focus on today, when I'm doing all 4 of them, and he says, I don't have to be perfect. None of us are perfect. But when I'm consciously thinking about these 4 things every single day, magic happens. That's when like all that abundance and all these good things were flowing to me. Like, I was the opposite of a rut. I was high as a kite on a mountain without doing drugs. And like everything was just like, it was just magical. Like, you felt like God's presence, like everything was working out perfectly. And then when he looked back at his life on the times when everything fell apart, I mean, and obviously when you lose that much money, I mean, he lost friends, he lost a spouse, like got divorced, like lost girlfriends, all kinds of bad things were happening. It was literally like his life was falling apart, and he contemplated suicide, just so you know kind of the full story. I mean, this was like hitting all-time lows. And here is number 1. Number 1 was physical. And if you've seen James, he is not someone that you would say is physically like fit, like someone you think lifts weights. He's thin. He looks more like, I would say, a computer nerd in a good way. James, if you happen to be listening, love you, man. But that's how I would describe him if you met him. And I'm sure he'd probably say the same thing, kind of a scrawny guy. But he said number 1 was physical. And that doesn't mean just like pumping iron. For him, it was getting up early, right? You guys who have read my book, I talk about that miracle morning, getting up at that 5 o'clock time. It is crazy how much better my life is when I wake up at 5 o'clock versus 6 o'clock or 7, which would be like the latest I've ever slept in since having kids. It is night and day what happens to me in a good way on a day-to-day basis. Even though you think I might be more tired by not getting as much sleep, it is nuts what happens when I'm up that early. And he said the exact same thing. And I'm going to read some things from his blog. So he says he wakes up every day at 5 a.m., and he either does basketball, he just walks out by the river. Obviously, if it's not raining, you can't do that. He would do yoga sometimes, just do anything, breathing, push-ups, just something to get the body going in the morning before most people are up, when it's just silent and you can go outside and listen to just God's amazing earth, right? To listen to nature, just to be out there looking at stars. There's something magical about it. And what was interesting is every time that he hit rock bottom, those were the times he found himself sleeping in and getting a little depressed and saying, well, gosh, I'll just do it later. Where that 5 o'clock, yeah, it sucks. It sucks for a little while, just being candid, to be able to have to get up that early. But once you do it, it just becomes easy. Now I've been doing it for quite a few months, And it seems so easy now that it's a complete built-in habit. So I'm going to read a couple of other things here that are a little bit harder. So waking up at 5 is not as tough. He also likes to go to bed no later than 9. He said getting that 8 hours of sleep was a game changer. And the final one, and I completely agree with this, I've actually lost quite a bit of weight, and I'm going to do another podcast about that, is to stop eating after 6 o'clock. He actually tried at 5:30. I'm trying around that 6 time frame. That means completely stop. And there are studies that talk about that even just your overall happiness, that it actually hurts your body and your overall happiness if you're eating really late at night, because your body cannot digest that well at nighttime. It's not meant to digest that much food at nighttime. Pretty interesting stuff there. And he looks, once again, this is a guy who's had some crazy highs and lows and has been able to back this up every single time. Now, number 2 is emotional. I'm going to take a quick sip of water here real quick. The bad news about doing one all by myself is I don't get to take a break and listen to someone else talk. So emotional. And let me go back to what James says, the 3 things he wanted in life. Number 1 is to be happy. Right? We all want to be happy. That was his number 1 goal. Number 2 is to eradicate, to get rid of unhappiness in my life. And then he wants every day to be as smooth as possible, right? Without any major hassles. And so emotional is getting rid of anyone in his life or anything in his life that he doesn't love. And for a lot of us, we might say, well, gosh, that's impossible. I don't love my boss, or, I don't love so-and-so in my family or my neighbor or in my kid's class or whatever it might be. I mean, he even went to the point, one thing he just doesn't like, and I kind of disagree with this, but for him, he's like, he doesn't like weddings. So he stopped going to weddings. He just refused everyone and said, you know what, I literally don't enjoy weddings, for just like Walt Disney refused to even go to his own, I think it was his own brother's funeral. He hated funerals. He hated anything to do with death, and he refused to go even to his own brother's funeral. If there's something to be said for that, right? If there's something that you don't love doing, why do it, right? I don't think God put us on this earth to have to go through things that we don't love doing. That doesn't mean don't do anything challenging, but if it's something like that you absolutely gives you zero joy and potentially even unhappiness, then gosh, don't do it. See what happens. Is it going to be the end of the world that James doesn't go to a wedding? Probably not, right? And if it gets him happier in a better place, just kind of interesting that was one for him. The other big one was honesty. Just that's small, and it seems small, right? Yet so many of us do either little fibs and I don't know that it's necessarily lying to other people. I think it's lying to yourself, right? And I did that, with alcohol for many, many years, lying to myself that, I didn't have a problem, and I would compare myself to so-and-so who drank a whole lot more than me. And yet, although that was true, I was still lying to myself that I didn't have the problem. It ain't about the other person. It's about me, right? It's about the body that God gave to me, not about, someone else's body. So a lot of it, too, was just being honest with one another, obviously, but even more importantly, just with yourself. I really, really love that one. The third one, mental. That means reading. That means writing, scribing, whatever you want to call it. James talks about, and I know this for a fact, the days that I do get up early, the days that I do start my day with positive thoughts, the days that I start my day just being honest with myself and being loving, and then reading and writing in the morning, things change. He talks about even doing Scrabble. If you're not into reading books, I think you should be. There's so much to get out of books. But even just doing Scrabble or Sabiki or anything, Sabiki, whatever the heck they call it. Sabiki, that's a fishing term. Sorry, guys. Sudoku is what I was trying to say. Anything that expands your mind and gets your mind thinking. And this is stuff we're still talking about, kind of more of a morning routine, if you will, for all of this stuff. I'm going to read his thing. He says, the other day I tried to write 100 alternatives kids can do other than go to college. I wrote down 8, which I won't write about here. I couldn't come up with any more, but it got his mind thinking. The next day, he came up with another 40. These were alternatives for kids to go to other than college. And it literally stretched his head, stretched his imagination just by thinking about something and writing it down. He talks about some other ideas is blogging. List 20 ways that the president can improve the country. List every productive thing you did yesterday. This improves memory and also gives you great ideas for today. Really, really interesting what just a little mental exercise can do. I think so many of us, including yours truly, we also get in the rut of not expanding the brain, especially if you've been doing a similar job for more than a couple of years, sometimes just like driving a car or, driving to and from the office or the kid's school. Your brain's on autopilot. You got, your mind is literally just doing the same thing it's always done without having to think. And that's not the best way to grow. And at some point can even lead to unhappiness and feeling like you're not growing, which is a big cause of people not feeling fulfilled. So number 4 is spiritual, which ties in, to unchurched. And I'm going to read what he says because I think this is good. He says, I feel that most people don't like the word spiritual. They think it means God or religion, but it doesn't. And he says, I don't know what it actually means, but I feel like I have a spiritual practice when I do one of the following. Pray. Doesn't matter if I'm praying to a God or to dead people or to the sun or to a chair in front of me. It just means being thankful and not taking all of the credit for just a few seconds every single day. Number 2 is to meditate. Meditation for more than a few minutes is hard and it's boring. Here's a couple tips he gives. You can also meditate for just 15 seconds by visualizing what it would be like to meditate for 60 minutes. And here's a simple meditation. Sit in a chair, keep the back straight, and watch yourself breathe. And if you get distracted, no problem. Just pull yourself back and try to breathe. Try it for 5 minutes, then 6, and then keep pushing. I completely agree with that. I think meditation is one of the most boring things in the world. However, every time I have done it and done it consistently, I feel like just amazing things happen into my life that day. It's really, really nuts. Like a deeper connection with God. I feel like I'm calmer, I'm clear in the head. Things just seem easier, and of course all the stress goes away if you're really doing some deep breathing meditation. So I love that. So next part is being grateful. Try to think of everyone in your life that you're grateful for, and then try to think of more people and write them down. I talk about so many times how powerful it is to write it down. The other one's forgiving. We had a whole podcast on just forgiveness. Picture everyone in your head who has done you wrong, and then visualize being grateful to them. Visualize forgiving them and how good that's going to feel. And then studying. He talks about, spiritual texts in terms of the Bible, etc. And his results, I think this is really, really neat. Let me scroll down here. His results. Within 1 month of doing those 4 things every day, I'd notice coincidences start to happen. I'd start to feel lucky. People would smile at me more. Within 3 months, the ideas would really start flowing to the point where I felt overwhelming urges to execute the ideas. That's 3 months. Within 6 months of doing this, good ideas would start flowing. I'd begin executing on them, and everyone around me would help me put everything together. Within a year, my life was always completely different, as in 100% upside down from the year before. More money, more luck, more health, etc. And then I'd get lazy and stop doing the practice, and everything falls apart again. But now I'm trying to do this every single day. Pretty interesting stuff, especially when this guy, I mean, you couldn't create like a better story or a resume to try to prove this against, right? And he's proven that it has worked every time. And I'm telling you, for me, and once again, it comes down to those four things that we all know we need to be doing, right? Which he talks about health and mental and spiritual and friends and being, forgiving. It's not rocket science, and yet how many of us are consciously making sure we do all four of those things? So we got the mental, emotional, and of course the physical side, and then the religious side or the spiritual side. I mean, if you just focused on those four things every day, try it. I mean, he says in 30 days. I think it's earlier than that. I think it's more like 20. Because I've seen it happen in my life. Like things just start turning around, and now I have been doing this all year long. Started a little bit in December, and already I have seen such a crazy shift, and just everything. To his point, people are smiling at me more. Like it just feels like these really odd coincidences start to flow into my life. And I know that might sound crazy if you are in a rut, but I'm just saying, try this out. I agree with him. Every time I've been in one, I focus on those four things in my life, especially doing it every morning. Do it from 5 to 6. Wake up 5 o'clock and do nothing but those four things from 5 to 6 and watch what happens in your life. Those are the 4 easy steps to quickly get out of any kind of rut in life. I urge you to try them. Don't just try them for a day. Don't just try them for 2 days. Try them for at least a month, if not more. And if you don't feel like things are like shifting, like there is magic happening in your life, then email me. I'd love to hear from you, but I don't want to hear from you if you said, hey, I tried it for one morning and it didn't work. You got to build the habits up. You got to build the faith up too, that it is going to work, and believe that amazing things are happening in your life, that believe God has your back and has a plan for you. And I will promise you it will be awesome. And I'd love to hear from you. It's Joe, Joe, at saltstrong.com. That's Joe at saltstrong.com. I will put a link to everything I talked about here in the show notes, which is saltstrong.com/unchurched. And you'll be able to see all the old episodes there as well. That's saltstrong.com/unchurched, and I will put links to everything. I would also love to hear from you on other topics that you would like me to cover, or any other guest, or special themes that you would like us to cover here at Unchurched. I'm really having a blast doing these. I'm really having a blast hearing from people. The emails I receive make it so much easier to take the time to do this every single week. And then quite frankly too, just by focusing on this and going through things like I did today, I feel like my life's getting better for it. So thank you for basically holding me accountable to do a lot of this stuff that I am sharing with you. So guys, I love you. I really appreciate it. I'll be praying for you too. If you have anything specific, let me know. Shoot me an email and let me know what we could help you with. We're here to serve you. And if you haven't yet subscribed and reviewed the Salt Strong Fishing Podcast, please do so. It helps out tremendously for us to get found, that we can impact other people that are finding us on iTunes and Stitcher, Spotify, etc. That means a lot to us. Otherwise, I will talk to you on the next episode. Peace. I'm out.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul.